questions. I will be putting in some information into the chat as well, such as links to the book. And I'm also going to include this beautiful video that Jeannie had posted to her webpage some time ago called Lulu's Love.
Oh,
And if you've ever lost a special being in your life and want to revisit the love that you felt in your heart for that special being, it's a beautiful 7-minute video and meditation opportunity. So I'll be putting that in the chat as well.
great. Well,
Very good.
welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jeannie Joseph, and I just spilled some smoothie on my shirt. I made a little smoothie for the dogs and for me. So sorry about that. Not very professional.
It's good for both, right?
It's good for both. Yeah. Well, that's one of our ideas here, is that I know a lot of us don't have the time to think about cooking for another creature. So a lot of what we're about is cooking in a way that you and your animals can both enjoy, in many cases, many of the meals. So we'll get to an explanation of that. So I am executive director of the Human Animal Connection, and I'm a canine food specialist. So that means that I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not an expert, but I do have quite a bit of information that I can share with you that I think you're really going to enjoy. So you're looking right now at the cover of Wholesome Canine Cuisine, and it is on Amazon. You can get the paperback or the ebook or the audiobook, although the audiobook does not contain the 111 recipes. So if you want the recipes, you're looking at getting the book. So as I was saying, I'm not a veterinarian. Any information that I'm giving you is for educational purposes. So please consult with your veterinarian or health professional if you have any specific needs. But the basic idea here is this notion of vitality. So vitality is health. We all want vitality. We want it for ourselves. We want it for our animals. And vitality comes from good food. Good quality food is what's going to give us good energy. Good energy gives us vitality. So it's a nice little circle here. Vitality equals health and longevity. So that's the name of the game, is how we can help our animals feel healthy, live longer, and live quality lives. That's what we're all about here. Oops, went the other way. Okay. So it's interesting, in the old days, some of us are old enough to remember the old days. In the old days, and I'm talking, 1950 and earlier, dogs ate homemade food. I mean, they just got scraps from the table. They did not get the kibble. They did not get the dry food that is so prevalent today. And there was a veterinarian named Dr. Broderick, and he was in that era. And he recognized that dogs, once they started, commercial dog food came in, dogs were getting sicker, and with mysterious kind of ailments, skin things, stomach things that couldn't be explained, but blood tests. And he really began to explore this. And this is in the 50s. And he wrote a wonderful book. And he has a saying, why would we feed our dogs anything we wouldn't eat ourselves? And we're going to take a kind of a hard and ferocious look at what happens in the production of commercial dog food, so that you can really understand that I'm not making this stuff up. It's really important to understand, and the labels can be very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this thing called human grade food. So the FDA has rules about what can be packaged as human grade food, and those are mostly good rules, and we want them. But we do not have the same kind of protection when it comes to pet food. There is no independent agency that supervises the quality and the processing of pet foods. And so what there is an organization of industry professionals from AFCO, and we'll talk more about them, but it's kind of like letting the fox into the hen house, if you know what I mean. So here we have this problem. In the US, 54% of dogs are overweight or obese, and nearly 1/3 of cats are obese. And this is according to various different studies. And there's a company called Goodness Gracious, which makes human grade dog food. And this is their time. This is their illustration. It's time to kiss off kibble, because they really feel that kibble is one of the main health compromising elements of commercial dog food. So as Ann Wigmore said, the food you can eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So that's what we're dealing with, is looking at, is the food medicine or poison? So here's my dog, Sophia, one of my 3. And she had 2 types of cancer at the same time I had breast cancer. So we were all in it together. And it really got me on this journey of thinking, what can I do? 2 different types of cancer, 2 major operations with general anesthesia, the removing teeth, the whole thing. And it got me thinking, we got to do better. There's something has to be done. So I'm going to give Sophia the credit for starting me on my journey. I was not someone who was familiar with the kitchen, let me put it to you that way. So for me to do this, it took some doing. So this is Bailey, one of the other dogs that shares my house, and he wants to tell us why homemade food is better, because when you're dealing with homemade food, you do not have the artificial ingredients. You don't have these mystery meat byproducts. If you've ever carefully read those labels, which are very long, and most people get lost after about 15 items or something. So there are some mystery meat byproducts, which are foods that are not human grade. These are the things that would not be considered edible that are put in pet food. And they're allowed to call them meat byproducts. These are things like feet, things like, parts of the body, organs, all kinds of weird things that you would not eat yourself. So the other advantage of homemade food is we don't have these added elements which have been shown to be carcinogens, and I'll go over some of them later so you can see what I mean by that. But you also have the ability to have more control over what you're feeding. Like, for example, if, as David was saying, he's not certain whether Kona has a sensitivity to chicken. A lot of dogs that are on commercial food can't eat chicken, but once we get them on real chicken, they do fine with chicken. So it isn't always the chicken that's the problem. It's all the other additives and the way that the chicken is processed. So the other thing that we're going to be really interested in as we embark on this journey is whether or not the ingredients in the food are what we call bioavailable nutrients. So that means just because it says on the label it has probiotics, the question is, are those probiotics available, meaning because the dog assimilate them, are they actually working? Because a lot of the probiotics in the pet foods will get kind of chewed up by the acid in the first stages of digestion in the upper stomach, not make it down to the bottom stomach, which is where they're really needed. So just because a label says it has some good nutrients in it doesn't mean it's bioavailable. And that's why we really want to work towards the direction of homemade food. So kibble, I'm going to call it dead food, because it is basically carbs. No matter what it says about how many good ingredients it has, you're going to find out why it's not nutritionally bioavailable. In fact, it's dead. So, of course, and then there are these additives that are added to pet food. Like, for example, in the industry, the people who make the cat food, they call it canine crack. We're going to talk about that. It's an addictive substance that they add to give flavor to the kibble because it doesn't have any flavor. So they make this little, pellets, which are gray when they come out. So they add color, they add flavoring, they do all this stuff. So it's a huge business, is finding out the additives that, and it's the same thing they do in human fast food. The fast food restaurants will do this. So it's a huge industry. So some people ask when they're just getting started, oh my God, does it have to be 100% homemade? I don't have the time, I don't have the money, whatever it is. No, the answer is it doesn't have to be 100% homemade. If you're ready for 100% homemade, it's a wonderful thing. But if you're ready to make a small change, it can lead to big results. So one of the things, at least in my system, I know some people are like 100% this, whatever. I'm very flexible. I recognize that clients have busy lives. And sometimes let's just look at, well, what is one change we could make? And when people see that their dog is doing so much better, they get inspired and they want to make another change. So please remember that you can work at your own pace. And then we're also going to talk about the pace that's right for the dog later in the presentation. So any questions so far? Anything okay. All right. So
Just
I'm
a
going to
confirmation of our worst fears of kibbles.
Oh, yes. Yeah, your worst fears. Well, your fears are going to get worse. I'm sorry when I tell you.
Can we
I'm going to
skip that
scare
and
you
go
a
to the
little.
recipes?
It's going to
And I'm
get
going to
worse.
feel like an abuser.
Yeah. Well, I did. You listen, my dog was on, rescued from the shelter. I came home with the shelter food, and then I went to the veterinarian kibble, and she was on that. She was eating that. So couple of years, but till we got smart.
Yes,
So
understood.
we've all been seduced by the ease and comfort of kibble because it's convenient, it's cheap. Dogs will eat it because it's got artificial flavoring that they become addicted to. So we're going to talk a little bit about AFCO. And I don't want to say that they're the bad guys, but they're the bad guys. No, they're not really the bad guys, but they have their own interests at heart. So AFCO stands for Association of American Feed Control Officials. And this is basically people in the pet food industry, manufacturers send their representatives to be part of AFCO. So it is basically, they represent the interests of pet food manufacturing. And protein, the healthiest ingredient in dog food, is the most expensive ingredient. So AFCO has decided that they only need to have between 18 and 22% protein in their products. So the question for us is, what's the other 80% that's in that food? Approximately 80%, different products, slightly different, but they only have to have 22, 23% protein in order to say beef formula on the front. It just means 23% beef. So then the question is, what's all that other stuff that's in there? So as Sophia would say, who's checking on the quality here? So labels are very confusing and very hard to understand, and they're actually deliberately confusing. And there's some new legislation about trying to make them make more sense, more readable, more translatable. But what's interesting is, on human grade, when you're reading your human food labels, the first ingredient is what there is the most of. But what's interesting is with the pet food, it's what weighs the most. So the heavier food is going to get listed. So sometimes there's a lot of ways that they can confuse us about what's really in here. But here's this one well-known brand. I won't mention it so we don't get sued, but the first ingredient is corn. Okay, now corn is not a healthy ingredient for dogs. Even even if it was organic corn, it still is not the best ingredient for dog. So corn is not a dog's best friend. And here's this major brand with corn as the first ingredient. Second ingredient, poultry byproduct. And remember, I told you that's what ends up on the floor after it gets packaged for human consumption. This is basically garbage. And something called bone meal, anything that they mash up, they can call bone meal. Synthetic vitamins come from India often, or Vietnam, other countries where we don't have control, where we don't have the ability to make sure that the vitamins are really pure. But also the problem with synthetic vitamins is that once they're heated to the temperatures that pet food needs to be heated at in order to kill the pathogens of using all of the basically junk food products, the vitamins that were listed on the label are not necessarily bioavailable. So there's the rub. But I skipped one, Animal Digest. Animal Digest is the animal protein that has been digested using enzymes and acids to break apart the components of meat. It's often made into a liquid or powdered form to spray onto foods to increase the flavor and aroma. So when you see Animal Digest on the label, which is here somewhere, I forget where it is, but it's in that little list there, this is something that they have added to make it more attractive because it's really not very attractive. So this label, even though it's got the all that food dye, because remember when it comes out, it's completely gray, colorless. So it's got all that. They list a lot of vitamins, but as I mentioned, that can be very deceptive because an innocent pet person can buy this food and think, oh, getting all these good vitamins. Well, not necessarily if they're not bioavailable. So that's one of the challenges. So I want to talk about, this is the scary part, well, one of the scary parts, something called 4D meats, which is unidentified meat sources. And it is sourced from cattle that was already dead. Okay, so they were not killed in the process of making the food. This is dead cattle, could have died from disease, from anything. It wasn't slaughtered. It was already dead. They found it dead in the field and they sold it to the pet food people. So they sell a dead cow to pet food, and then the pet food says, oh, we've got beef, but it's not healthy beef. So according to Keith Zeiler, Vague and unidentified meat is likely inconsistent in quality, meaning you could be feeding scraps from a variety of sources. These ingredients might even include 4D animals. This could include expired grocery store meat, zoo animals that die, roadkill, and even euthanized or deceased animals. So one of the problems that we're discovering in the pet food recall business, of people who really follow this, is Molly Morissette reports that one of the problems is how to address the nagging problem of phenobarbital popping up in pet food, because this is the drug that's used to euthanize companion animals such as cats, dogs, and horses. So these dogs that have been euthanized at shelters, veterinarians, ending up in pet food, because there's no other way that this phenobarbital would be present unless it was from euthanized animals. So is everybody terrified now? Just slightly.
I'm guilty. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't be well afraid to speak up. You're talking about us.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I was there with you. That's why I had to make the change. So this is what I was explaining to you before about cat crack and animal obesity. It's called palatants, and it's a huge industry, the creation of foods, the scents that the animals will want to eat. So it's often the smelly chemicals found in rotting meat, and it's to keep them, often found in rotting meat, and also additives to keep potatoes from discoloring. If you remember Morgan Spurlock, who made that film, what was the name of that film where he ate McDonald's for 30 days? Oh, Super Size Me, right. Well, if you leave McDonald's food out, the flies will not eat the French fries because it's not food. There's nothing edible. Even the flies know it's not food. So you can try that experiment sometime. They might go for the meat, but they're not going to go for that. So yeah, so a lot of the companies use these palatants in the food, and they're used for human food and they're used in pet food. And this is one of the reasons why the cats are really struggling, because there's so much of that in the kibble. There's something called mycotoxins in dog food kibble, and they are not good. And AFCO will allow up to 2% of mycotoxins in pet food. Now that 2% may not seem like a lot, but if you're giving that animal that same food every day for years and years and years.
Is he out there?
I'm sorry? Oh, somebody was, yeah. So mycotoxins are legally allowed in food, but they are not healthy. They are known carcinogens. And this is one of the reasons why we need to make our own food, so we can avoid that. So here's an example of a Chinese pet food plant. Not to single out China, but this is a lot of the pet food is not manufactured in the US. And this is what happens is that they produce nearly 10 million tons of food annually. 90% of the brands contain meat meal, which is basically the scraps from animals that humans can't or wouldn't consume. And half of the brands will add barley to the dog food, which can be challenging for dogs to digest, causing them to absorb less of the food's nutrients. So this is one of the issues, is that some of the ingredients in the food, although barley is perfectly healthy in small amounts for dogs, but in the amount that they're in the dog food, it is interfering with the absorption of the nutrients that the dogs need. So you read that on the label, it says barley. Oh, that sounds good, healthy barley. But for dogs, it's not in quantities. And another thing you'll see is a fairly high amount of salt. We all need a little bit of salt, but this can negatively impact the dog's kidneys. And one of the things we're having an epidemic of is the second 2 killers of dogs today is cancer and kidney failure. So that is a direct relationship to the food that's being served. So in order for kibble to be made, it has to be heated to over 400 degrees to destroy the pathogens from all the dead and dying carcasses that have been used in the food. But of course, when you heat something to 400 degrees, there's no longer any nutrients left. And so then they add the synthetic vitamins, which are unregulated. And the problem with those synthetic vitamins, first of all, vitamins in their natural state work in combination. So like all the B vitamins will work together. And so just isolating one B6 in a synthetic vitamin is not necessarily going to be as effective as if you're eating a piece of, a piece of meat that has B vitamins in it. So we want to have vitamins in their natural form in order to really feel confident that they're doing the job that they're supposed to do. In addition, feed plants are largely unregulated. They're often unsanitary, and this is what it looks like. So yeah. So we're going to suggest that if you can just make one change, consider reducing or eliminating kibble. So I still use a little bit of kibble. I use about a tablespoon of kibble for my little dog, but it's a very high quality kibble. It's very expensive, much more expensive than the grocery store brands, and I just do that for comfort. I have no illusion that there's any nutritional value in the kibble, but just because Sophia was raised on kibble her whole life, I give her just a tablespoon. It just gives her a little crunch. By the way, it's an illusion that kibble helps dogs keep their teeth clean. This is not true. It has no positive effect on dental. So some people say, well, what about how, they need that for their clean their teeth, which we've been sold a bill of goods. We've been sold a lot of misinformation by the industry. So Dr. Marty Goldstein is a veterinarian, and he talks about how when he was in veterinary school in 1970, 1 in 10 dogs would get cancer, but they were always older dogs. And today, anybody know, it's 1 in 2 dogs are getting cancer at any age. So Sophia got cancer, she was 8 years old, so it was too young for that likelihood. So this is one of his dental care products that I give my dogs. So I don't get any money from any of these companies. I'm going to be telling you some products that I enjoy. You can pick and choose and see what interests you, but these are high quality. It has I just forgot the thing that's good, the green chlorophyll. It has chlorophyll. So it helps with breath and so on. So yeah, cancer is one of the top killers in dogs today, followed by kidney failure. So yeah, we want to really pay attention to that. So there's something called PFAS, which is in pet food packaging, and there have been some new laws. I'm not sure what stage the law is in. They're trying to pass laws to get rid of those packaging. That when we buy that packaged kibble, it comes in this very thick, waxy, papery package. Well, for a lot of companies, that package costs them more than the ingredients in the food. And they are filled with PFAS, which are synthetic chemicals that have been linked to a number of health issues, including cancer, liver damage, immunotoxicity. So PFAS are commonly referred to as forever chemicals because they don't break down over time. So they build up in the environment, they build up in the body, and there's a lawsuit going on right now about this. So there's a lot of discussion about that. So if you're buying kibble in that package, it does keep it fresh, but it at the risk of chemicals. So not to pick on, well, just to pick on one, I should say, pet food recalls. So for example, Pedigree, a big brand in the supermarkets, one of the top brands, they voluntarily recalled some food because there were loose pieces of metal inside the bag. So this is just an example of the kinds of things that goes on. If you're following the industry, you get these at least monthly, hear about a recall. And these are not recalls that are making the headline news. People who are buying these products are not hearing this news. But there were 68 million pounds of pet food recall in the past 3 years. That's a lot, right? Can we agree that's a lot? So in previous years, there have been pathogenic bacteria, which was the leading cause, and recalls with phenobarbital contamination being the second cause. So that was, again, from the euthanasia. Animals have been euthanized. There's also aflatoxin contamination, the number one reason, which was 60 million pounds recalled for that, is a known carcinogen. Pathogenic bacteria, excess or insufficient vitamins, and mislabeled pet food. So AFCO should be watching out for this stuff, but they're not, because there are so many pet brands and it's voluntary to comply with their rules anyway. So another scary word is glycotoxins, which is also called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, and these are compounds that occur when a fat or protein becomes glycated in a chemical reaction with sugar. So the health concerns here, obesity, diabetes, food allergy, we were talking about with David before, poor gut health, we were talking about heart disease, hardening of the arteries, kidney failure, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. We're seeing dogs now with a lot of Alzheimer's, cognitive disorders that we did not see. Those of us who are old enough to remember dogs having a cognitive dysfunction. This is new, in the last 20 years or so. This is not what we remember if we were living with dogs that were eating the same food grade as humans. So it is very possible that the dog food and commercial food processing is in fact making your dog sick. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the basics of canine nutrition. This is our class for the high school. Jenny came to watch this. Canines Teach Compassion, where we bring the therapy dogs into the high school. So this is a picture from that. So we're going to just kind of go over the basic elements. So it may seem confusing at first, but in learning anything new, it can be a lot at once. But basically, you're going to start thinking about, okay, what's a good protein for my dog? What's a healthy fat? What's a healthy carb? What are the vitamins, minerals, and probiotics, prebiotics that I need? And if you get those, once you sort of understand that, then you can improvise. You don't have to measure. You don't have to read the recipe. It's just like, well, what am I going to start with my basic protein? And with protein, we want to see a lot of variety. So we don't want to see chicken every day of the year. We want to see chicken and beef and turkey and, a little bit of this, a little bit of pork, not too much pork. But so question, if I'm making homemade dog food, do I need supplements? So let me ask you, I'll just be curious to see if people have an opinion on that. Jenny, do you have a thought? If you're making homemade dog food, do you need supplements?
Well, for me, it would definitely be maybe, because it would depend what you're feeding them. So
That's exactly the right answer. Yes. Yes. So it's definitely a maybe towards a yes. The reason being is that a lot of people will talk about the raw food diet as being the way of the ancestors, what the wolves ate. But if you look at what the wolves ate, they ate the whole chicken. Okay. They ate the heart, they ate the liver, and in fact, the alpha wolf gets the first pick, and the first pick is not the meat. It's not the muscle, it's the organs. So they go and they eat the liver, the kidneys, the brains, and so on. So the answer is yes, unless you're really in a situation where you can let your dog free hunt, you're going to be needing some supplements. So how much, and we'll get into. So it's not that you're going to need a ton of supplements. And I use, I'm going to show you some powdered supplements so that it's very easy to dose and very easy to swap in, swap out. Okay. So what vitamins does my dog need? And by the way, this is all in my book. I'm just trying to give you a little introduction here, but yes, they need A, B, C, D, E, and K. So in my book, I go through all of these different ones. So for example, vitamin K comes from some green beans or some beef liver, a little bit of chicken and pork, they can get vitamin K. Vitamin D in fatty fish, fish oil, egg yolks, beef liver, and sardines. Sardines are your good friend if you have a dog. Sardines in water once a week, just giving them one sardine a day and just finish the can out. This gives them a lot of the healthy omega-3s in their natural form, and eating the little bones in sardines is good for them, won't hurt them. So sardines can really help with gut balances. It helps with the prebiotics. So the macro minerals, yes, we also need some calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, potassium, chloride, and sulfur. Sound very human, right? These are things that we need, and we're getting them if we're eating good foods, but most of our diets are not what they used to be because, the soil isn't what it used to be and so on. So that's why, one of the reasons why we need to consider supplementation with our animals. So again, my book will list all of the details of these nutrients and what foods that they're in. Microminerals this is in very small amounts: copper, cobalt, iron, zinc, selenium, manganese, iodine, and chromium in small amounts. But again, if they're getting their organ meats or they're getting a little chicken liver every once in a while, you don't have to worry about supplementing. But, this is why we need to have a lot of variety. Like copper is in lamb liver, for example. But maybe you can't find lamb liver in the store, but you can find some beef liver probably. So where do I start? We want to start with the best high quality protein we can. So some examples, these are all familiar foods that we eat, or most of them we would eat. So beef, chicken, eggs. Eggs are your best friend when it comes to dogs. If you're not an egg eater, maybe it's not so easy, but I make scrambled eggs in the morning and I put whatever I have laying around, some spinach or cooked spinach or some yams or whatever, some cheese. I make it for myself and they all get a little portion. So they get their regular breakfast. And then they get their second breakfast like hobbits, and which is just a tablespoon or two of whatever I've made for my eggs, and they absolutely love it. You see them just go bananas. So we want the best quality protein you can get. If you can get organic grass-fed, that's obviously the best, but if you can't, don't worry about it. Just do the best you can. And we want to vary this as much as possible. Again, we don't want to, this is how we can develop food sensitivities, why people on the same brand all the time, they start getting food sensitivities because they're getting the same food all the time. Now, this is something we've been sold the bill of goods in the pet industry. Don't change your dog's food. Well, remember back in the 40s and 50s, dogs were getting a different meal every day, right? It was whatever the people were eating, they were getting a lot of variety. So venison is deer. Yeah, and that company, goodness gracious, makes venison for dogs. So canine approved vegetables. A lot of people don't realize that they do need some vegetables. And the wolves, when they've analyzed their poop, they find that they have been eating a little bit of vegetables, and also the animals they've eaten have eaten vegetables. So they eat the rabbit has eaten some vegetables. So they're getting vegetables. Now, this is not a high percentage. This is about 10 or 15% of the total meal. So it's not a huge amount. But if you've got some broccoli around, if you've got some cooked carrots around, if you've got a little bit of kale around, or whatever it is that you're making, baked potatoes, for example, not boiled because boiled has too much solanine in it, which is not good. But spinach, sweet potatoes, zucchini, anything that you like, we want to cook it up or puree it. The reason being that they can't eat raw vegetables. I'll have Lulu here eating a raw carrot. They can eat a little, once in a while, but generally speaking, the vegetables need to be either lightly cooked or pureed for better digestion. If vegetables are new to your animal, I would introduce them with beef broth so that they get that delicious beef broth taste. And I don't give the vegetables separate. I usually give it to them in the main dish. So while they're eating, I put the spinach in the eggs, so they're getting it in the eggs, or I'll throw a little cooked carrot in with their main meal, or different things. Now you notice a little word here, garlic, in bold. Has anybody ever been told that you should not give your dogs garlic? A lot of people have been taught that. A lot of people, and it's completely false. And we're going to go through, we'll explain the false study that presented that information, and it's not true. All right, so fruit also, just a little bit of fruit, 5 or 10% of the meal, doesn't have to be every day. So for example, that smoothie that I spilled on my shirt was for the dogs, was goat milk, frozen bananas, frozen strawberries, and 1 date mixed in the blender. They love it. Okay, so it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. So these are some of the fruits that are good for dogs, and some of the vitamins and minerals that in each of these fruits. And again, you don't have to memorize this because it's all in my book. Another thing is grains. Now there's a trend in the industry, and according to Dogs Naturally, it's a completely bogus marketing trend to say that you need grain-free. And some of the veterinarians are hip to this, because one of the things that we're seeing in dogs in grain-free diets over a long period of time is an increase in cardiomyopathy, so cardio problems from grain-free diets. So dogs do need grain. Now they don't need a ton of grain. They need about 10% of the meal to be these healthy grains. So I make oatmeal. They love oatmeal. I make a huge amount of oatmeal, put it in the refrigerator, and every day they get a tablespoon. So it's not a lot, but I only have to cook it once, and it lasts for 3-4 days in the refrigerator. So this is one of the things, is that any of these things that you like and you're making, you can make for yourself and for your dog. And quinoa, for example, is high in iron and zinc, which is good for blood health, oxygen levels, and immune function. So don't forget the grains. They're really important. There's just a complete hoax that made some people think that if they're going grain-free, their animals should too. So garlic. So there's been a lot of, if you go to almost every website online and ask about garlic is toxic for dogs, never give your dog garlic. So here's where it came from. There was a study in 2000 How many dogs do they test? 8. Okay. Now, Jenny, is that a scientific study when you've tested on 8 dogs? Okay. For how long? 7 days. Okay. 8 dogs, 7 days. And 4 of the dogs were given 75 cloves a meal every day. And it was not even fresh garlic, it was garlic extract. Okay, so this is insane. I mean, we would be sick if we were eating this amount of garlic. So that study said, oh, garlic is not good for dogs. Okay, so this is insane because garlic has been used for eons, hundreds of years. It's one of the oldest, healthy medicinal items is garlic, but we suggest that if you want to chop it fresh, so don't use the garlic that's in the, you could buy it at the grocery store in the jar. That's good for cooking, but we're talking about chopping it fresh because it does need to be fresh garlic to get maximum benefit. So we're going to chop it up. We're going to let it sit for about 10 minutes before we serve it. And we're going to serve it, of course, in the meal. This releases the medicinal element of allicin, which is the good thing in the garlic. So if you've got a 5-pound dog, you're talking about 1/6 of a tablespoon. If you've got a 30-pound dog, you're talking about 1 tablespoon. So teaspoon, I'm sorry. So this is a small amount, and it doesn't have to be every day, but however, the health benefits of garlic are extraordinary. So it prevents formation of blood clots, it decreases cholesterol, it widens blood vessels. And remember, since we're having so many heart issues with dogs right now, we really need to look at this. But it's also antibiotic, antifungal, antiparasitic, and it can help prevent fleas and ticks. It's also anti-inflammatory and an immune strengthener. So this is something that we really want to look at if you've got a dog that's dealing with one of these health conditions. So I'm not saying that garlic has to be every day all the time, but if you see one of these issues or you're concerned about one of these issues, or you want to take a period of, say 7 days on having some garlic, I have a supplement that has garlic in it that helps with fleas and ticks. So yeah. Good. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the transition to homemade food. We don't want to go off of commercial food 100% in one day. We want to do it gradually. And depending upon your dog, if your dog is healthy and doesn't have any major issues, this would be a kind of formula to start with. Your dog may need slower. Some dogs can go faster. So this is sort of like everybody has a little bit different variation on this. This is sort of my summary of everybody's version of this. But basically you're looking at day 1 to 3, you're going to add 25% of the meal will be this healthy homemade food, 75 what they've been eating all along. On days 4 through 6, we're going to look at a 50-50. Days 7 through 9, we can go to 75% healthy. Day 10, 100% healthy. Now, some dogs need a slower pace. Some dogs can go faster. And remember, you don't have to end up with 100% healthy. If you can just eliminate the kibble, you're going to be doing a great thing. So you could end up staying with, I probably do about 50% healthy, but in terms of homemade, but the other 50% is a very high quality brands that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. But again, I don't cook every day. I cook once or twice a week. So I make enough. I'll boil up the chicken, or I'll saute the ground beef, just lightly sauteed. I'll make up the vegetables. I'll put it in the refrigerator. So that gets me through 3-4 days. And then I'll maybe do it again. And variety is the secret. So just to give you one example, these were some of my very first recipes here. And just to show you how easy it is, on the left, we have some steamed chicken. Boiled and steamed chicken, a little bit of brown rice, some spinach, or I think there's a kale in this one, and spinach. And on the other side, some broccoli and sweet potatoes. So just, it's whatever you have around, right? You can mix and match. You don't want to have spinach every day, right? So you want to, you have spinach one day, and then you're going to have broccoli, and then you're going to have some kale, and you're going to have as much zucchinis. You're going to rotate as much as possible. So here's an example of the sharing the breakfast. So this is a breakfast that I'm going to eat too. Scrambled eggs, sweet potatoes, spinach, some cooked cranberries, homemade, and some baked potato shavings. Real easy, right? So I'm making food for myself and for the dogs at the same time. So I'm not having to cook twice, which a lot of people are afraid of. This one I love. This is 4 ingredients. It's an egg, sort of sauteed little egg with a little bit of ripe banana. I had a raspberries. You don't have to add a raspberry, but I had them here, and a little bit of cinnamon, and that's a sweet treat. So this is an example. This wouldn't be a meal replacement, but this would be a healthy treat. And I made them here in the little cupcakes, but you could make them in any shape or form you want. It's really easy. So about a third of my book are these simple, easy recipes. The other one's a little bit more complicated. But again, once you understand it, you'll be able to improvise. So one of my great favorite things in the world is goat milk. So 65% of the world has been drinking goat milk for thousands of years. This is not some newfangled health trend or something. Well, maybe it is for us in the so-called civilized world. But goat milk has compounds called oligosaccharides, which help reduce intestinal inflammation. So if you've got a dog with skin problems, with digestive problems, this is something you want to explore. Like I said, I made that little bit of a smoothie. They got about 2 tablespoons each of my smoothie. I'm going to drink the rest after we finish. So again, just real simple ingredients: 3 frozen bananas, frozen strawberries, and I put 1 little date in. It was just delicious. I love it. So goat milk has these prebiotics, which are so important because prebiotics will survive through the acid in the upper stomach, get down to the lower stomach, which is where we really need it. So we need prebiotics and probiotics, but we really need the prebiotics because they can survive the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So this is according to Dr. Deva Khalsa, a holistic veterinarian who's been at it for 30 years. So goat milk is your friend. Sardines, as I mentioned, once a week in water. This on the right, once a month, it says tripet. This is something that your dogs will go insane for. They will turn into lunatics, so happy to have it. You will be absolutely disgusted when you open the can. It is the most horrific smelling thing in the world. You get used to it, but it's pretty awful. So a tripe is the stomach lining of the beef. So it's not something you're going to get, and you don't want to get it in the grocery store because it's been bleached. So this is green tripe. And just once a month, you could add this to the meal, and this will get you your probiotics. So there's a lot of ways to get that. We want to get them in as bioavailable state as possible. So we mentioned the supplements, and these on the upper left where it says cornucopia, this is an example of, and my dogs do get cornucopia. They get about a tablespoon per meal. So this is me adding into whatever else I'm serving. The reason it's a tablespoon is because it's expensive. It's not cheap, but this is 100% food grade, 100% organic food developed by that veterinarian in the 50s. So he's been formulating this formula for 50 years. So it's a really, really good product, and it comes in several flavors. It's a completely family-owned business. You can call. His daughter still run the company. You can call and say, "Hey, Michelle, Jeannie sent me. My dog has skin issues. What should I start with?" And they'll put you on with the vet nurse, and really, really, it's very hands-on. You can really have good conversations with them. So Cornucopia makes some really great 100% organic food grade food. And I tested it myself. I ate all of those. I tested it. I didn't eat a lot of it, but I ate a teaspoon of each of these. So yes, you can eat it. If the world comes to an end and all you have is dog food, you can have this food. And they also make this wonderful superfood, which you just sprinkle in. So they have some very good products. Then another company that I really like is called Infinite Health Labs, probiotic with prebiotics and enzymes. So that's another really great. If you're looking for a good probiotic, don't trust the probiotic that's in another packaged food. You want to use probiotic as its own element, like it just getting a bottle that's all it is. Colostrum is really wonderful. It really helps with immune function, emotional well-being, and a sense of security. So the shelter dogs should all be having this. Unfortunately, it's too expensive for shelters, but I give it just the tiniest little bit for my dog. David, here's a product I'm going to recommend to you. It's called Shine and Luster. It says it's canine seasonal allergy support, but you can use it. I get that my dogs get it about once a week. I do it before a therapy dog visit. It is so fast that an hour after having this, their skin is softer. That's how fast it is. It's like bizarre. It's like almost a miracle. So I only give it to them like right before a session because everyone goes, "Oh, your dogs are so smooth and soft." Yeah, so that's a fun one, Shine and Luster. Better bones. Dogs need to chew on bones, but I'm not the kind of person who wants to have a lot of bones lying around the house. So this is a powder. So it's free freeze-dried beef bones made by Four Leaf Rover, and I love it. So just like a quarter teaspoon right into their meal. They make many good products, but a couple of the ones that I really like are here. So Guts and Glory, this is the organic organs and glands, things that we don't want to think about putting in food probably unless you're really brave. So this is a powdered version of some of those organs and glands that they really need. Seven Shrooms is a great natural immune support product. Hip and joint for hip and joint issues when the green lip muscle powder. So those are just some examples. I mean, there are more. And in my book, I give a whole long list of different conditions and what products that I recommend. And on my website, we'll be updating this all the time so you can see what's new. So I just want to say that 100% of the proceeds from the book support our work, the Human Animal Connection. So if it's possible for you to buy a copy, it's on Amazon, again, in print or ebook or the audio version without the recipes. And
My copy is on the way.
yay! Thank you. And
Yeah.
if you could give me a 5-star review, that would be so helpful. That would be really helpful. And also,
Sure.
if you'd like to donate to us, the humananimalconnection.org, there's a donate button and you can donate whatever you want for today's presentation if you'd like. And we will open it up for questions if anyone has any questions.
So
It's a
I will
lot of
start with,
information. Yeah.
I'll start with a reference. You mentioned the one thing, although I have a lot of good ideas. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat here.
Ah.
The one thing starting in increments, the one thing that I could change today, like right away, what would that be?
Yeah, right away, I would be reducing kibble and adding in any fresh protein you can start with. So you could boil some chicken, you could boil up some ground beef, a little bit of pork, any protein that you like to eat, start adding that in replacing the kibble. So they're
So
getting,
how,
go ahead.
so how do you, and I know you said that this will come through experience, but how much do you feed them, right?
Yeah.
So she weighs 65 pounds.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
and as you pointed out, some of this could add up, right? So you're looking at you want to do the very best.
Yes.
So what do they eat? How much do they eat?
Yeah, so in my book, I give the chart by weight, how much they need,
Okay.
how many calories per day. And if you have any questions, you can also ask your veterinarian, but there is a chart in the book that
Okay.
lists, it'll say 60 pounds, so that this is how much you should be feeding and so on. So it's a little bit of subjective in the sense that, you know, if you're giving a lot of that really good protein, you want, there are no absolute standards for how much protein dogs should have because they haven't done the studies because it interferes with the dog food industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, it's a
So
big
yeah,
enemy if you're not
so
careful.
let's say if we start on the lowest end, which is AFCO, is 23% of the meal being protein, to the veterinary suggestions, the holistic veterinary suggestions, which are 50% or more. So between that, you know, you might find you want to nudge up the protein to the higher percentage of the meal. As
Sure. So, okay, and you'll have a conversion factor in the book, I would say. So that means like Conan needs 8 ounces a day, 16 ounces a day. I mean, sort of a weight value,
yeah,
one in
and
the
there,
morning, one at night, or some derivative thereof.
yeah, and how old is Kona?
Not quite 3.
Oh, she's a baby.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, not a baby, but
She
yeah.
was so skinny. We had her on goat's milk. I thought there was something wrong with her, but black German Shepherd, they're lean anyway, especially the females. They're
Okay.
kind of skinny by their
Yeah.
genetic makeup.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have body charts in there. You know, it tells you how to evaluate whether or not your dog is at the right weight. And again, the veterinarian can give you an opinion. But there will be charts that you can look at and get some idea of what would be the proper amount.
Sure.
And then a lot of this
Excellent.
is trial and error, you know, because every dog is different. So every German Shepherd is different from every other German Shepherd. So, you know, exactly what they need. You will be experimenting a little bit to see, you know, if your dog is getting a little putting on too much weight too fast, you're going to cut back. If your vet says the dog's too skinny, we're going to add some more in, so it's a little bit of trial and error too.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, you kind of learn your way around, but
Yeah.
that you start off in the right direction. So thank you for
Just
that.
start in the right direction, and then you get inspired because you see how the dog responds. I mean, you should see the look in their eyes. They know what good food is. I mean, they'll eat good and bad, but they know the difference.
Yes, yes. No, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I do the
Yeah.
cooking anyway, so I'm not
Oh, good.
a stranger to the kitchen.
Okay, you're way ahead of me then. You're way ahead of me.
In
Yeah.
fact, I was going to make a homemade ice cream either today or tomorrow for 'em.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, that's what the one I was telling you about, a smoothie. It's kind of a doggy ice cream. I make it a little more liquidy, but you add more ice, it gets thicker. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No
Yes,
chemicals, all good.
absolutely. And to your point, I mean, we didn't know, you're trying to balance. She also has a companion. We have a Springer Spaniel and also a Chihuahua. So Kona's not alone, but
Yeah.
but to try to migrate from where they're used to eating kibbles
Yep.
and over to the really to all it's pretty much human,
Yep.
right? So
Everything that's in my book is all human grade food. So you can eat just about everything. Some of the meals for yourself, you might want to add some condiments that you wouldn't add for them. And of course, never any onions. But in the book, there's a long list of things that dogs cannot eat. And it's a little bit different from what you'll see online. As I mentioned,
sure.
the garlic being a good element, and some things that people don't realize their dogs shouldn't have, like macadamia nuts or caffeine.
Chocolate, right?
Yeah,
And say
yeah,
not chocolate,
yeah,
things like that. But as you
yeah.
pointed out, garlic is on the list.
Garlic is on
Not
the, yes,
yeah.
yeah. Most other people's lists will say no garlic for dogs. The holistic veterinarians disagree. And as I mentioned, that study was only done with 8 dogs for 7 days. So it was not a scientifically valid study, and it's resulted in lots of misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation out there. One reason because the pet food industry will do their own apparently informational pieces that are really written by, I know now because I've been doing the research, I can tell the difference between one that's really one of their writers and, somebody that's done independent studies. And, it's still early in the field. Veterinarians do not get any nutritional training in their schooling, which is unfortunate. And the amount of studies is minimal at this point, but there's enough that we can do. There are enough people who've been doing good research that we can start to say, okay, these are things that we know to be true.
No, there's no question that we are really almost governed by special interest because they have the money,
right?
And they put it in the right places, and it's unfortunate it has the influence as a negative could have a negative influence on all of us. So
and what's interesting is there's a huge percentage of dogs mostly in other countries, but a huge percentage of dogs that live in the wild, like in India and, other countries, they just scavenge on garbage. Their lifespan, and a lot of people think, well, oh my God, of course they do get hit by cars and things, but aside from being human accidents like that, their lifespan is typically 18 to 22 years. Eating junk. Okay, eating whatever they can, dead animals, whatever they can find, garbage, whatever. And our animals in our culture, eating commercial dog food, lifespan is much shorter, and these older, like that Dr. Broderick said, in his days, dogs did live to 18, 20 years. It was not unusual. And that is, if you hear about a dog, I hear about some dogs occasionally, because since I'm talking to people, oh yeah, my dog's 18, and they've been on homemade food,
No, that's very reassuring. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And
So
Jenny,
I have a question about, so I'm looking at your book and seeing, I found a page about vegetables and what works for them and what doesn't. But one of the questions came to mind was about beans, and I'm not seeing anything about beans in here.
Yeah, let's see. I think I have beans someplace.
Probably in here, but just
yeah,
not
I
sure.
have a list about beans. So I would say the short answer, it's in the book, but the short answer is some beans, yes, not too much. You know,
Uh-huh.
that would be in that 10% zone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of the beans are good. Most of the beans are safe. I forget where I have that. So I'll find it and send it to you. But yeah.
So we
So,
also, on the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, so your lists in here are in sort of different categories. There's vegetables and then there's
Yeah.
meat, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Go
you'll
ahead,
see
Dave.
fruits.
Sorry.
There's fruits and tells all the fruits you can have, what fruits you can't. The thing with fruits you have to watch out for are the pits. So for example, dogs can have cherries, but cherry pits are toxic.
Oh,
Sure.
sure. Yeah.
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 So dogs can have a little slice of avocado occasionally, not every day, but not the pit, right? Because first of all, choking hazard, but second of all, the toxic pit. So, but fruit, very good. So you'll see it'll be listed by fruit, by vegetables, by grains. I think it's beans. If not, I'll get back to you about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I can find it. So.
Yeah. Great. But yeah,
So you mentioned,
I'm gonna try. I just got some garbanzo beans that I'm gonna kind of mash up and try for them. So
Oh, that's actually what I was thinking of. I'd made some last night. I thought, oh, I wonder if I can give
perfect.
this to my dogs.
Yeah, mash them up. They're cooked, right? You cook them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they want to be cooked, soaked overnight or whatever, but cooked, and mash them up. Well, they don't have to be mashed, but I'm gonna try mashing just since I'm introducing it for the first time, so I'm gonna mash it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I might mix it with a little, if I have some yams, so I'm going to mix it with a little yam, but that's just
Uh-huh.
because of what I have around, you know, if I had some
Right.
spinach and put some spinach in and, you know, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Any other questions?
so
Yeah,
you
Jeannie,
touched on,
Oh,
On-
go ahead,
go
Carol.
ahead, no, let the first, person, go ahead.
Jeannie, there is a question in your message from Cass. If you could take a quick look at that, please.
Okay, let's see if I can go look. May I put out a PSA for the Canine Aging Project since you spoke of canine dysfunction? Yes, Evan McLean is involved. Yes, please tell us. You want to unmute and tell us about it?
Sure. The Dog Aging Project is a project that looks at the decline of memory, among other things, in animals, particularly dogs, across lifespan. As you mentioned a little bit earlier, dog aging and memory decline looks a lot like human aging and memory decline. Although it's called canine cognitive dysfunction, if you look it up in the literature, it's very similar to Alzheimer's, as was mentioned.
Mhm.
And then the Dog Aging Project, which I dropped a link in the chat for, is a citizen science project
Ah,
that's a consortium across just dozens of universities where they have dog aging labs or dog cognition labs that you can do work with your dogs at home at any age. And there's just what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a giant database of information about dogs and breeds and age and all kinds of interesting characteristics to help us understand both dog aging better as well as that interestingly the dog model for human aging.
yes, that's wonderful. Great. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that really important information. Because again, you know, the canine dysfunction was not what the norm 50 years ago before commercial dog food. So I'm not saying it's the only issue. I'm not saying it's going to solve every problem, but I think it's one of the areas that we need to explore. Yeah. The
Yeah.
relationship between what they're eating and their cognitive decline. So my dog Sophia, you know, again, after 2 types of cancer and 2 major surgeries, putting her on the homemade food, she like got 3 years younger in terms of her behavior, in terms of the way she looked. I see pictures of her now. I didn't know she had cancer at the time. And I see pictures of her now. It's really dramatic. She looks really a lot better. And people, even the students in class noticed it. They're not veterinarians, but they could see the difference as we got some of these issues resolved. So yeah. But thank you, Cass. That's great.
Yeah, and I'll just also say too, even independent of food, dogs also age.
Yes, they
so
do.
they don't go over a cliff when they get old. So
Yeah.
reading
Yeah.
through some of the stuff and getting exposed to some of the stuff can help people, probably not this group because everyone's so focused on their pets, but understand the process of aging in dogs and help them have a little bit of empathy too. Because, you know, when your dog consistently forgets the dog door, even though it's 1 foot away from the human door, it's not because they're trying to be, you
Right.
know, annoying. It's because maybe they're just a little old.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to, Cass, let's stay in touch with that because we are interested in doing some work with senior dogs too. So let's keep in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts, questions? What did you guys think?
Just-
What was most useful to you? Just this, since this is the first time doing this presentation, what was most useful?
I would say for me, it's just all of it, but certainly the danger of kibbles, you know, you just never really get, I like to say, an honest opinion on that, right? A well-founded, you know, uninfluenced, or say objective. So it goes on, and we've had animals throughout our life, with our children, now our grandchildren, and some dying of cancer, aneurysms, or I just, and we're beginning now, from what you're saying to me, it all makes sense. And it's, look, if, think about our own diet, you know, metabolic syndrome, if we don't eat properly, I
Right.
can't imagine it's not the same for an animal as well, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And unfortunately, the veterinarians with no nutritional education, independent, and they get like the pharmaceutical reps come by and hand them all this
Yeah,
expensive
new cars, take them out to lunch. Yep, we get it.
yeah. So that's what they get. You know, they get the training, you know, the 15-minute training from the sales rep, and here's all this stuff. And even the shelters sending them home with Hill's diet, you know, really and the veterinary prescription diets that are twice the price of other kibbles are worse. They're actually nutritionally poorer than some of the grocery store brands. So that's a double pain, you know, sadness that so many people.
Well, that's a
Sophia,
challenge, right? That to do it fresh. I mean,
yeah,
I'm going to be building a plan to cook once a week, right?
all
And just go
right,
portion it out.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but people have to worry about what's it going to cost me to do this, right?
Right. Yes,
So
it is not going to be cheaper, I'll tell you that. As you start getting into, but again, you do what you can. So like I will do some of the goodness gracious frozen prepared dog food because I'm not about to go get venison. You know, so they do have a rabbit formula, which I have rabbits in my yard, your wild rabbits, but
I'll
a
be
little
right
bit of
over.
rabbit once in a while. So I do things that I mix and match. And all
Yeah,
the, you know, some of those supplements that I showed you are expensive. They were $30 to $40 a jar, but they last for several months. So, you know, and you're not using them every day. I'm always varying my supplements. I don't do the same thing every day. I kind of do it by intuition, but you know, you can kind of get a feel for what's needed and watch. You don't want to introduce too many supplements at once. You want to do one for a week and see how they're doing and say, wow, she's more perky. I think that green lip muscle is helping her joints. Okay, we're on, you know, that kind of thing.
last question on my side, if you don't mind, in that is, I was with the pork, you made a reference to pork in limit and smaller quantities.
Yeah.
Does that include like the pork loin, but also you got ham? What
Yep.
high soda? Is it, why the limit on pork? Is it because like ham, the
Just
high sodium content, or what's the guideline there?
right. Well, the pork is very good and has certain nutrients. It just is high fat, so you wouldn't want to overdo pork. So once a month pork, you know, that kind of thing. For the ham, that's like the cold cuts, that does have high sodium. So I put just a little bit of high quality ham in the egg sometimes. But you don't want to overdo the cold cuts because that's basically their salt for the month. Which if they're not getting
Right,
salt is good. So you can give them a slice of cold cut turkey once a month or cold cut ham once a month, but not every day.
sure, I get it. Yep.
So for if you're traveling or if you know that you're going to have just time tight stuff like that, do you have any thoughts about the prepared human grade foods that are out there now for dogs, like chai dog or
Yeah.
dog?
Yeah, yeah. And again, I haven't tried them all. Were you here all the way through the presentation? I don't know if you heard because I
I
mentioned.
was.
Okay. Yeah. So I will alternate. I'll use Farmer's Dog once in a while. I use Goodness Gracious, which is my favorite of the frozen human grade food. And the other one is Just Food for Dogs. So those are the three. That doesn't mean that there aren't others. Those are the ones that I know of. So if you're going to be not home, but you have a freezer and someone's going to be taking care of the dog, you just thaw it in the refrigerator overnight and in the bowl it goes and you're done. So, those are some options. Is that what you meant, or you meant taking the food with you?
No, that's what I meant actually. Yeah. So there's another one also that my veterinarian recommended that's called Chai Dog out of California that gets
Oh,
sent.
chai dog. Yeah.
And it is exactly what it sounds.
Yeah.
You align the food with the dog's
Yeah.
dog, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Like I said, there's 15,000 pet foods out there. So obviously I haven't tried them all. And I'm always trying something new. Like Sophia was on Farmer's Dog for 2 years or something before I discovered some of the ones that I like a little bit better. And they also changed their formula a little bit. So yeah. So, and that's one of the things to watch out for is the companies don't always tell you when they're changing their formulas. So
Yeah, we've had that experience too as they got bigger because we started with them, and as they had lots of shipping problems and container problems, and then they changed their food. So yeah, all stuff to keep an eye on.
It's all stuff to keep an eye on. I mean, this is a never-ending learning journey. I have all this knowledge, big book, but it's just a drop in the bucket. So we're going to be in this journey together for a while.
Yes.
But every time we eliminate the known toxic stuff and add more of the healthy stuff, we know we're moving in the right direction. Well, great.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Jeannie.
yeah.
Before everybody leaves, please check the chat. I dropped a lot of links in there if you didn't notice already. So please take a look. There are links to the book. There are links to the recipes, links to the Lulu's Love video, which really is a wonderful video, as well as a few other things. Please visit HAC's website, also in the links, and join the newsletter so that you can hear about upcoming events.
Yeah, we have a wonderful workshop called Doing Nothing with Donkeys. We usually do it about once a month. Jenny's been there and brought all her friends.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Great. Well,
All right,
thank you all.
Thank you again.
Yeah, and definitely keep in touch. David, let me know how your journey's going. If you have any questions, email me. And Cass, we definitely would like to learn more about the Canine Aging Project.
I think I dropped my email in, and then you can just read about it. But if you're in Tucson and you want to be connected, you can just hit me up at the university.
Okay, great. Are you at the university yourself?
I do volunteer with that group.
Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful.
Are you volunteering over at Humane Society with Evan's group?
I am, yeah. In fact, it's Evan's group.
Okay. I volunteer over there too. I just haven't volunteered with Evan's group. So
You're a dog walker.
I am.
Yeah, now you look familiar. Yes, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll connect one of these days in person.
Community.
I'm a former dog walker. Now I have some health issues. Can't do it anymore, but yeah, great. Well, thank you all. And thank you, Carol, so much. Carol, if you're able to stay on a moment, we'll just chat for a couple of months. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you,
All right,
Cass,
thank
Jenny,
you.
David.
Thank you all.
Spread the word. Tell your friends about this.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
I'm trying to disconnect you. Hang
Oh,
on
okay.
just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I can't get my iPhone to cooperate.
Okay. There's one more David left, but
There's one more.
should I do remove or? Okay, great. Thank you. You were wonderful. Thank you for putting in all those.
You're welcome. We still have. Okay.
I got to stop recording. That's what I got to do.
There you go.
There we go.